February the 14th, 2014, I took my last drop of alcohol. And prior to that, I had 20 years of abuse of alcohol, substances, and a crazy lifestyle, really, a crazy, crazy lifestyle. I had a lovely family, one of 7 children. And I suppose really, you know, if you want to talk about mental health and just try and bring that into it a little bit, you know, I suppose mental health is something that's in my family. You know, there's quite a lot of depression. There's quite a lot of, there's quite definitely quite a bit of substance abuse when it comes to alcohol, particularly. Some people say that alcoholism is a family illness. And, you know, it's clear to me that if you've got it, you've got it. If you haven't, you have it. I've got a brother that drinks safely. You know, he has a couple of beers and he has that power to say, do you know what? I've had enough. I don't want to drink anymore. See me from a youngster, I never had the ability to stop when I started. And that's what I learned. And when I come into recovery, which I do now in 2014, when I took my last drink, I learned that, you know, I had some form of allergy that if I put alcohol in my body, I couldn't stop when I started. But the thing that really that I learned most about me was a physical addiction. To put down a drink was the easy bit for me, but to stay stopped was very hard because I had a mental mind that would tell me every time something went wrong or every time something was good, that this time it would be different. Do you get me? Like, so my mind would just constantly say to me, yeah, this time it'd be different. Knowing full well that if I had a drink, I couldn't stop and it would end up in carnage. Something would tell me that this time it would be different. So from a young age, I now know, you know, when I look back at it, I was never really that character that fitted in, you know, and I was always out to try and impress people. And you know, I know we're going to talk about a bit of self-discovery as well, but a lot of my side was to learn who I wasn't when I got sober, because I spent so many years trying to be someone else just to try and please people. And I believe that my biggest defect of character was what I believe is it was like a low self-esteem. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where that comes from. Like I say, I had a loving family. My mum's got 7 children, so we was brought up in a busy house. There's a little carnage and stuff like that. But you know, out of those 7 children, there's 3 people with alcohol problems. And you know, that's quite and that's not nothing to do with the parents or the upbringing. That is because they all have this same thing, is when they put a drink in them, they can't stop. So, you know, I started drinking at a very young age. I didn't realize back then that it would take me out of myself. You know, I could never sit comfortable with myself. And I always wanted to be out of myself. I was restless, I was irritable, and I was discontent when I didn't have anything in me. And at early days, it wasn't just about getting drunk all the time. It was just about being comfortable in social situations and being out and about. But as time went on, what happened was I started to depend on drink a bit more. And I never ever thought it was going to be a problem. And I used to say to myself, the day I knew I used to drink a lot, and everybody used to tell me I drank a lot, but I used to say to myself, the day that I will stop drinking is the day that it affects my work. But obviously 20 years later, when I can't get out of bed and I'm shaking, rattling worse than Ozzy Osbourne in the morning, it's too late. You know what I mean? It's too late. And that promise was made to myself, and it was too late, but you know, years later. But so what I believe now is that, you know, that I suffered definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, from a multiple of head issues, I'd like to say, mind issues. You know, my brain would tell me that I wasn't welcome in places, and then I had a drink and it felt great. My mind would tell me I was no good. You know, my self-esteem would say, you're shit, you're no good, this, that, and the other. And you have a drink and you think you're Superman. So I had a massive ego and a low self-esteem. So I would hide behind jokes. I would hide behind a smile. I would hide behind anything, you know, clothes, dress, appearance. But internally, I felt like shit all the time. But I didn't really know that that's why I was doing it. I didn't know that that's why I was drinking. I didn't know that's why I took drugs to be a part of something that I thought I fitted in. But I went into a pub at a young age. And I like to say I went to a party in 1990, something it was, and it finished. That party finished in 2012, really. You know, when I was absolutely broken and busted. But in that period of time, I never dealt with an emotion. I never dealt with an emotion. So if I had a good day, I would drink. If I have a bad day, I would drink. If I lost a job, I'd have a drink. If I got a job, I'd have a drink. If someone died, I'd have a drink. If there was someone born, I'd have a drink. So all these mixed emotions that we should be feeling to make us grow emotionally as a human, as a man, I never dealt with them. I just drank on everything. So anything that used to happen, good, bad, or the ugly, whatever it was, I never dealt with it. So I just suppressed it until the next problem came up. And I just drank on that and drank on that and drank on that until the drink got worse and worse. Because when I put the drink down and wanted to stop, those emotions want to come up. And I'm banging trouble then because my head then says, "Oh, you don't like this," and then you have to go again. But then because I have this allergy that when I put a drink in me, I can't stop, the problems keep occurring. So I'm on this massive wheel and I can't get off it. I cannot get off it. So alongside all this drink and this carnage and this big smiley face, and I used to say like a little plastic gangster attitude, you know, like I thought I was the man in the area, but inside was a little broken, scared boy. So along with all this, I met some crazy, some delightful, not so delightful characters on my journey. And I felt safe around some of these people, you know, if the bigger the reputation you had, the better it was. Mm-hmm. If I also drink and anything else, and that lifestyle gave me courage to get into things that I shouldn't have got into. Crime was a thing, you know, and there was lots of drugs involved. There was lots of violence. There was lots of things that went on that should not have gone on because they weren't really a part of my journey. But when I was drinking, they were, and it was a part of it, you know. So in 2000, and then throughout all this time, you know, I met a beautiful woman, Sally, who I was with for quite a number of years, and I had 2 beautiful children with Sally. I disregarded all of that, you know, because I thought that alcohol was more important. I didn't realize that all of that was more important than a family life, and they were just getting in the way of my drinking. But, you know, I knew that I was banging trouble. By the time I was 34 years old, she'd had enough of me, kicked me out. And I was broke. I was absolutely broke. I was drinking in the morning to stop the shakes. I couldn't get to work. I couldn't drive. You know, I was just banging trouble. And that's because I just constantly used a substance to change the way I felt all the time. Always to change the way I felt, to get me out of myself, because I didn't like feeling myself.
Wow.
And but by the time, but the biggest thing that happens to anybody that has any sort of addictions or alcoholism or anything like that is when they're using it to change the way they feel, they become physically dependent on it, and it gets worse, never better. But what happens is that what I was using, which was alcohol, was my drug of choice. It stopped working. So it no longer got rid of all that. And it all starts to come up. So you panic and you drink more, and it all starts to rise in you. And that's when your head is going to explode. You can't cope, you know. So suicidal thoughts come in. I can't say I lost count the amount of times I've tied a rope to the banisters and thought to myself, I've got to do it, you know, because I can't go on like this. I couldn't live with drink. I couldn't live without it. I tried to stop everything. And I mean, I didn't physically tie the rope up there, but in my mind, I was visualizing myself hanging. Who would find me? Who would give a shit if they found me? You know, that sort of thinking, that real low, rock bottom thinking. And it's sad to think that if I was to kill that person back then, I'd have been killing the wrong person, because the real Tony's sitting here right now. You know that? You know, so anybody that I say that it was ever going to be contemplating suicide or anything, please think about it, because that person that's telling you to do that is not the person you can be, because that's what happened to me, you know. And I've heard that story quite a few times. People hit that rock bottom, but, you know, they're too scared to do it. And thank God they did, you know. Thank God they didn't. And so in 2014, around that time, after 20 years of absolute pure carnage, a lifestyle that was really fast, clubs, pubs, nightclub, everything, you name it, you know, it all went on. And I don't need to go graphically, because I think everybody knows what sort of lifestyle I'm talking about. And it was crazy. But, you know, I was different to a lot of my friends. And, you know, when they grew up and started making families and buying houses and things and getting them settled, I was still on a path of self-destruction. And 2014 came. Something happened in a pub in 2012. And, you know, something had to change within me, but I never knew how to change, because I only ever drank with people that drank like me. I associated with people that drank. So I never had a vision of what it was like outside of that pub, that lifestyle. I never had a vision. I didn't know that there was really another life beyond that. And in 2012, something happened in a pub, and it was quite violent. And I remember watching it, witnessing it, be a part of it. But what happened was I went back in the pub and I picked up my drink and I stood there and started talking to my mate. This was a Sunday night, about something in work the next day. And something shifted in my mind and said, this is not right. You know, by this, previous to this, there'd been certain things that had gone on that were really violent, and certain lives had been lost, and so stuff that had gone on, you know, lots of deaths through the consequences of drink and drugs, through, you know, through direct drink and drugs, you know, overdosing, or, you know, died of alcoholism, and whatever it was, lots of deaths through the consequences or direct use of drink and drugs, to the point of there where I thought I'd had enough and I was looking for a way out, but I had no idea where to find it. I just knew that something had to change. And I stood at that bar. I turned around to my friend Paul, who actually died a couple of years ago. He was drunk in a car, going to have an argument with someone. He hit a tree in Epping Forest and died, you know, and it broke my heart because I knew, you know, we were like little brothers. I loved him to pieces, but he was on the same path as me that I got off. You know, there's a train, I always like to say, and you can just get off at any stop if you want. It just depends on how far you get. But the last final destination is death when you're on that train, you know, and he was on that train. And I kept saying to him, you can get off that train, Paul. And he didn't make it, God bless him, you know. But I turned around to Paul after something had happened and I said to him, Paul, this isn't right. I shouldn't be standing here talking about work tomorrow with a pint in my hand like that just never happened. What happened, you know? And he, what's the matter with you? Get another beer in. There's that, you know, it was that typical man, brutal mentality. Yeah, you're all right. You know, and you could never talk about feelings in a pub, could you? You know, you can never go in there and go, you know what? They go, how's your day, Tony? I go, well, I'm feeling a bit restless, feeling a bit irritable, got a bit of anxiety. You know, you couldn't go in a pub with that. They go, how's your day, Tony? I go, yeah, cushy, bruv, get us a beer, sweet. You know, it was like that. Yeah, go on, get us a. And they go, oh, if you went in the pub and you said you had a bad day, they'd go, yeah, well, just, there's a pint of Stella and go and stick a line of that up your nose. That'll sort you out. You know, that was the man's way of talking and dealing with things back then. I turned around to Paul that day and I said to him, Paul, this isn't right. I can't do this no more. And I walked out the pub and I never really went back to it, to be honest. I never really went back. But what I did walk out with was myself and that alcoholism and all of the shit that had gone on prior to that 20 years. You can't just put the drink down. It's not that straightforward. See, a lot of these professional places, they think, oh, do a drink diary and things like that. Well, I tell you what, if you've got that allergy, if you put one drink in you and you can't stop when you start, you try doing a drink diary. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I'm not that if anyone's doing it, I'm really pleased. It's just my experience. It's not I'm not a professional. It's an experience, you know? Yeah. And so I was, so I was in the pub, yeah, and when I walked out there, I walked out with all those feet and basically the carnage, the baggage of my past hanging on my back, and it was like a massive rock in a rucksack, and I couldn't. But I knew I had to stop drinking. Long story of it short was, I met another woman, and she took me into her home up in Colchester because I thought if I can just get away from my home where I lived, that pub, all the wrong uns that I drank with, which some of them are lovely people, you know, still friends now, but all these people that I drank with, but I always blame the outside world. I've learned that it's an internal job. It's an inside job, not an outside job. Nothing on the outside can fix my broken insides. There's not anything out there. Do you get me? There's nothing out there because I spent so much time trying to buy things, this, that, and the other, trying to fix my internals with external stuff. And I walked out of that pub and I knew that something had changed. This woman, she took me into her house and I had this brief period relationship with her where actually she really did help me. And what happened there was that's when I first ever identified myself to someone else that, you know, I had this bad drink problem because I thought it was just the place I needed to get away from. If I could just change my lifestyle, I'd be all right. And maybe I could just control my drinking. But it just went on to realize that actually, if I didn't have one drink, I wouldn't get drunk. Yeah. So I could put the drink down. But I always say that your alcoholism is two sides of it. You've got alcohol, then you've got the isms. If you put the alcohol down, you're still left with the alcoholic and the isms. And that's when they got the crazy head on. It was like my head was like full up with seagulls, you know, just this noise. And like a washing machine head, you know, when just things just keep going round in your head over and over again. And you just want to scream because you can't shut your head up. It just, it's on you. It doesn't stop.
I feel like that's a really powerful metaphor or analogy that you're providing there. And it's almost making me feel like linking the one you were giving about having this backpack of the things you're bringing, if that's like a backpack of your dirty laundry, and that laundry is constantly now spinning in your head all the time, and it's bombarding you when it sounds like you reach this point, almost if we're transitioning into this moment of self-discovery where you now face the person who you've become or who you've been all these years, and now you genuinely see it and have to articulate it to someone. Because I think I mean, wow, your story and journey so far, just phenomenal. And thank you so much also for sharing it. I mean, I think there's a lot there for people to take away from that childhood voice a lot of us have, and how we see ourselves while we're young, and the way that we sometimes unwarranted, we tell ourselves we don't belong, and we act up even though no one has told us to act up or behave a certain way. There seem to be these default things that we do in order to fit in. And it's often, I feel, because we don't have a script or a rule or anything like that, and we just do what we think everyone else wants to see. And often it's unfortunately not the most beneficial thing. And this theme of numbing, and alcohol, shall we say, is, say, a numbing agent, but there are many things a lot of us do to numb ourselves from our experiences or the world or the rejections we faced, whether that's reading a book, eating, whatever it is. For some people, I feel like you've touched on something great there. And the environment you're in, you're like a fish in water. You're going to the pub, you're doing all these things, you're not addressing emotions, you're not actually addressing anything else going on. And even the people around you aren't, unless sometimes you get to this point, which is where you seem to have arrived to, where you come to the realization and you see the opportunities there to leave that environment and try and make a change. And it almost hits you like you see yourself in the mirror for the first time. I mean, there's also this Jim Rohn quote, which is a powerful one as well. And I feel like he says, we often make change. I think I'm getting this right. Let me double check. We generally change ourselves for one of two reasons: inspiration or desperation. And I feel like at the moment we're at your point of desperation, and I'm sure we'll get to the inspiration first. And I'm sorry to jump in. So please carry on.
No. I called it a gift. That's exactly what we called it, a gift of desperation. It was a gift to be that desperate. I couldn't go on the way I was. I was sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. I was sick and tired of putting this face on that was a joker, but I was the joker that became the joke in the end. Do you know what I mean? So I become the joke. You know, people one minute they're laughing with me, next thing they're laughing at me because I was a broke man. And unfortunately, in this day and age, some people find that, you know, humorous, don't they? You know, someone's been all right, and then all of a sudden they're like down in their luck, like, yeah, and you become the topic of the joke, and that's what happens.